Hello, true duelists. My name's Craig Fee, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Single Card History, the series where I talk about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that didn't. Today's card, the card that scratches the most primal, unga-bunga part of your brain like no other card can. It's Gren Maju to Eiza, or Eiza. I'm gonna fluctuate between this video. I don't care. Gren Maju was first released in Invasion of Chaos in 2004 as a lowly peasant rare, fittingly in the set that really kicked off Banishing Shenanigans. Other notable reprints include a super rare print in OTS Pack 12 in 2019, and most recently, as I make this video, another peasant rare in 2024's Battles of Legends Chapter 1. Yeah, it's had like 8 prints as I make this video, and only one of them wasn't a common, so it's never been on the ban list either, and I guess that's because Konami just doesn't want to ban fun in regards to this thing. A level 3 fire attribute fiend type monster with undefined original attack and defense, its effect reads, this card's attack and defense become the number of your banished cards times 400. Now that is a simple effect, and one that has gone only to be easier and easier as time goes by. Early on in the game, there were people who would try to play banish type decks to try and take advantage of this card, using things like Macro's Cosmos or Dimensional Fissure to try and help buff it up and, disrupt the opponent's plays all with one floodgate or two. But that wasn't the most effective strategy compared to the meta over the course of the years. This would change for this card a little bit though in 2016 exactly with the release of Pot of Desires. Desires is the card that gave most decks a free +1, but it also gave Yu-Gi-Oh's brightest minds a -9 in advantage, which is a discussion you'll still see from time to time, probably whenever you're watching this video. The Desires discussions are just wild like that. But for Gren Maju specifically, it's the card that gives it 4,000 attack off the bat. Yeah, and also, a +1 to hopefully draw into other cards to disrupt your opponent, on top of having a normal summon 4K beater, but if nothing else, it gives you a 4K beater that you can normal summon. Its earliest successes came as a slotted-in tech card in anti-meta stun decks, a deck that really played cool cards like Banisher of Radiance and Fossildynia Pachycephalo and Moon Mirror Shield so as to not let those two smaller cards be run over in battle. This was a popular enough deck, and honestly still kind of is for people who truly want to play as little Yu-Gi-Oh! As is possible in my experience. The deck, of course, techs in some Solemns and at one point in time Mirror Forces just to be battle protection for your little fuckers that just don't want to be on the field from the point of view of your opponent. But among this deck's troubles is of course the lack of meaningful damage output. Moon Mirror Shield means if you're dealing with battled monsters, you're only dealing 100 damage at a time, and that can take a little bit to ultimately get the OTK, so rather than have to hopefully beat them down before they draw the out, you can just throw in Gren Maju and Desires for consistency, and then normal summon a real big-ass beater that doesn't really care about things like Fossildyna's special summon lock. This is a build that also threw in Necroface for more easy banishes to help further Gren Maju's effect on top of, just banish shenanigans, doing it before Runic players thought it was cool. You're teching Goldsark and then Necroface banish it, and you're like a 2016 Runic player kinda, or the closest thing we had to it. And in the trend that you'll see throughout this video, over the years we've gotten a handful of banish-related cards en masse that have helped this card out by virtue of making the number go up. Like say, Gizmek Orochi, the Serpentron Sky Slasher, a 2450 body that can summon itself by banishing the top 8 cards of your deck face down, and can further banish 3 cards face down from your extra deck to pop a monster. And while you can only use one of those effects per turn, it's still an extra 3200 to 1200 attack, depending on which packages you've activated, that gets your Gren Maju all that stronger. There's also Pot of Extravagance, which further banished cards to draw, which helped got more consistency to draw into Gren Maju, and of course buff that little fucker up. And of course the deck teched in the newest stun cards as well. Things like Inspector Border, to not only not let the opponent play and use monster effects, but to really test the limits of the Yu-Gi-Oh! And reading player joke. Because I'm visibly struggling to do so in this video, but believe me, throw a border on the board, there's a reason I haven't covered that card yet, let me tell you. Either way, it's infamous for Gren Maju players to just tech in some absolute bullshit, a whole lot of pink cards, and then just summon a big fuck off Gren Maju. That's kind of a whole deck into of itself that we've covered here now. You can see why it's popular, because people enjoy playing it, but that's far from the success limit that the deck has had of regionals, toppings, and whatnot, because this would go on to become a YCS deck of sorts. That's right, it got second place in 2019, embracing modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Finally abandoning the pink cards and playing all spells and monsters. And of course that meant playing some danger cards and a field spell to abuse with reckless abandon, because if you're playing modern Yu-Gi-Oh! You better be abusing a field spell. The danger monsters help to draw deeper with their effects, and they work beautifully with things like Gizmek Orochi, since they were all level 8, or had enough level 8s among them to give you rank 8 plays if you were forced to go first, like by, say, summoning Titanic Galaxy, or if you were going second, a Galaxy Eyes engine to make things like Cypher Blade or Full Armor Photon to pop cards and make an OTK that way, if you didn't see Gren Maju. And of course, there's the field spell of choice, the Golden Castle of Stromberg, a field spell that forces you to banish the top 10 cards of your deck during each of your standby phases, and can summon a 2600 beater from the deck to help push out damage, and you know it's also level 8 to help you with your Xyz plays. This is obviously not so much a stun-based deck, instead being more of a combo with surprising potential, seeing as this was a shock to the community when it got second place. None of us saw it coming. And you know that Gren Maju can put in work in that deck, since it gives you 8,000 attack by the time your third turn comes around, so that can be pretty schnasty. And the shock would continue when another Gren Maju deck would not only top a YCS, but would go on to win one in YCS Niagara in 2019, being another showing of this deck's strength. This one didn't play the Castle engine though, going all in on the dangers instead for the deep draw strategies with things like Trade-In and of course Desires. It's more of a rank 8 turbo that main decked super polymerization to help break boards, and again just abuse rank 8s like Titanic or maybe number 68 to stop the opponent's plays if it's forced to go first. This was the absolute height of the deck in regard to its competitive relevance, but it still popped up from time to time after this. Other cards that help Gren Maju to banish your own cards and help disrupt your opponent continued to come out. Things like Eater of Millions that can give you a buff on your Maju, as well as help get rid of opponents' problem monsters that maybe can't gotten around by battle? Can't gotten around? Is English optional? Yes, it is. And of course, everyone's tried and true favorite, Dimension Shifter, to make sure all of your cards get banished. And you know, to not let the overwhelming majority of your opponents make plays, and you will be hated for it, but hey, you're justified. It's because you want to banish your Desires as well, so it gets to 4,400. Think about it. There's also this Subterra build that topped, which is kind of funny since it's just a Subterra deck with a Gren Maju thrown in for the spice. Like, Guru Control is a deck that can play Shifter or something like Eater of Millions and then sit on its floodgates, and Desires will help you mitigate the lack of advantage generated by just hoping the opponent doesn't out your floodgate. So why not tech in a Gren Maju for the possibly funniest and easiest beatdown play imaginable? Probably because it's bricky as hell when everything else the deck is trying to do is more Subterra focused, but it did top, and that is funny. And as you know, you might still see the deck pop up based on one of those two YCS topping lists. The Danger variant is more popular from what I've been able to see, still all in with trade-ins and every danger name to help link spam and deep draw into Desires, and of course the boy himself, or the Castle build for the free body and easier access to a big stacked up Gren Maju. Not to search Gren Maju of course, but it's a lot more reliable to get the field spell than it is Desires to make sure your Gren Maju gets that 4K stat line. Beyond that, it's the same as it ever was. I've noticed Kaijus have gotten pretty popular in Gren Maju based decks these days because people just like Kaijus, and even more than that, I saw a deck list submitted by someone whose username was the same as my cat's name, which I found to be incredibly funny. And that's not important to the history of Gren Maju, but it is funny to me that someone's username is what I named a cat. There's also some things that I can recall that Gren Maju players have tried or used in the past that I haven't found any success from in regards to topping deck lists, because, you know, plays happen regardless of whether or not they get tops. Like, you could throw in Soul Absorption, which is a continuous spell that gains 500 life points every time a card is banished. So when your Maju gets 4,000 attack, you can get 5,000 life points. and then, you know, try to make it so that your life points are as absurd as your Gren Maju's attack, and then you can win in time if nothing else. Obviously, this doesn't do anything by itself, so it's never really seen competitive success, but I do see the appeal behind it. Like, it's kind of funny to sit there and be like, yeah, I have 76,000 life points and it's game 2. Okay, that's funny to imagine. You have Necroface and then keep banishing. It could happen. It could happen. Gren Maju is also summonable off of the effect of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Horse Prince, which I've never seen anyone do anything with that, but it is a level 3 fire monster, so if you feel like getting in the kitchen and cooking something up, you can, there's an idea of some sort. And of course, there's the single funniest play to happen with a Gren Maju that has ever been, you know, done in recorded history. And that's, of course, just setting it, because Gren Maju will have its attack and defense modifier take place whenever it's flipped face up, regardless of you flip summoning it or, say, the opponent attacking into it after you've set it. So it's being done that a Gren Maju player won by simply setting the Maju, the opponent poking it to see what it was, and then eating a metric fuck ton of damage, because they wouldn't set it if they had the high attack stat, right? Obviously, that's a play that's a lot less viable in the modern day, since more and more people will get rid of your set monster before even entering the battle phase, but it is still very funny to see if you can ever, you know, encounter it or force that to happen by playing it yourself. Overall, Gren Maju is a very simple card that appeals to a large number of players because it just satisfies something so base. There's really nothing quite like hitting the opponent for as much damage as is possible in one swing. It satisfies Yu-Gi-Oh players in the most primal of ways. And really, as time has gone on, it's only gotten easier to give this more attack than most other things in the game. It has lent itself to a very stun-heavy strategy over the years just due to the nature of banishing cards, but I will say that it's still a fan-favorite deck despite those, you know, stun-related shenanigans. Like, yeah, it's playing Shifter, and it's played Macrocosmos and Dimensional Fissure and other bullshit, but the reason it does so isn't to, like, harm your plays, it's to banish their own things, more or less, to just punch you in the face really fucking hard. Like, it gets a free pass to play those things that most people hate, since its gimmick is at least understandable or relatable enough to merit respect. And beyond that, it's really just like a generic Link Spam rank 8 deck these days, so it's hardly the most toxic thing going on. You know, if you're watching this the day it came out, Snake Eye may or may not be a thing. You may have been very upset about tier limit. You can name a plethora of decks that are more annoying than Gren Maju Turbo. Either way, since Konami is fond of banishing to remove or as a function as a coster, things like that, I think you're going to continue to see Maju played for years to come, because like I've said so many times, there is nothing quite like it. It's just the most base desire in all Yu-Gi-Oh players. This card truly embodies Unga Bunga Biga Numba. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh single card history, Gren Maju, the dat guy. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. And don't forget, as always, subscribe to Yu-Gi-Oh Weeby Man. That's me, Craig Fee-Man Guy. I didn't have a stroke, you did. Not only will you be impressing your smoking Italian wife, but you will immediately become a true duelist. And at me, just click the button. I'm begging you. I'm not begging you. I'm not reaching for anything under this. Just have a great day.